Today I'm being sponsored once again by CurseForge, modding hub for The Sims 4, to use mods to ruin the game, this time by isolating 100 Sims into tiny quarantined cubicles where each of one of them will pass their existence of becoming a professional influencer / video game streamer. If it goes well, we'll make millions of dollars, like a Bitcoin mining factory, but with people. The only way to make this possible is by using a bunch of mods you can get from the CurseForge app, which I'm going to use to install mods that let me do things like this, along with a bunch of shady command line manipulation and power user hacking. If you decide you want to check it out, my link is in the description. Without any further ado, how do we even begin? Day 1. I spawned in to Seaside Sim Lane with the maximum number of Sims allowed in a house. 8. We're gonna get to 100 in a second, but before we even begin, let's talk about what each one of them will inhabit. The rooms were minimally furnished from this map mod I used. It required breaking down the walls for entry, and then I sealed them in. Bed, toilet bowl, kitchen, reading, shower, and dismal lighting. But it was just barely enough to stay alive. Don't think of it as being held against your will, think of it as being taken care of. The next step was to get 100 Sims into the lot. Fortunately, this is made possible by another mod I used, where you can just, well, you go around town and you just take people, to be honest. You just talk to them and then you invite them to join your family. So everyone came over my house to experience loss, loneliness, and desolation voluntarily. 5:30 to 7:30 a.m., 5 days a week, the streamer's schedule. But I still just didn't have enough people because there just weren't enough. So I decided to write a Logitech keyboard macro and bind it to one of my mouse buttons to spawn in more people than you're supposed to, which seemed to be working at first, but then it stopped working because now I had 100 people out on my lawn, inside of one another, and it was taking them too long to do everything. This is an unacceptable way to play the game. That's what I would have said until I downloaded the amazing Simulation Lag Fix and Simulation Unclogger mods, both of which somehow helped. Hopefully that makes me seem smart, and not just like I make a lot of mistakes. I had created one of the greatest influencer gatherings, as exemplified by the kawaii sweatshirts worn by the e-girls standing on my lawn. Actual women. With all the people gathered together on the lawn outside the house, I tested various configurations of the room again. Toilet bowl in front of the live stream desk as a chair? Possibly good for multitasking. I even tried destroying, then rebuilding all of the rooms. I don't remember why. But ultimately, I figured that I'd have to tear down a tunnel through each of the walls and individually command every Sim to walk his or her own way into solitary confinement. And I individually cemented each Sim with sheetrock into quarantine, most never to be seen again, aside from their appearances online via webcam performance. As my Sims made their way into their unfamiliar and claustrophobic new existences, my computer began to speed up, since there weren't just 100 Sims having a conversation on the lawn, but not by much. I can't afford a very good graphics card. Honestly, it was very satisfying to watch them cell themselves in like nuclei in individual cells. Except sometimes they would walk through the walls, T-pose intimidatingly, or congregate in one room. Honestly, unacceptable. After 4 hours of gameplay, I had finally managed it. 100 Sims, standing in 100 rooms. Almost all of them completely beside themselves about what to do. Ironically, before I was able to equip them with PCs, most of them passed out due to extreme exhaustion since I had to remove the beds from each and every cell to allow them to file through the destroyed walls. This necessitated rebuilding almost all 100 beds, a Sisyphean and nightmarish task unto itself, which didn't really even help at all since most of them were unable to locate the bed directly in front of them since they had already departed from consciousness. The best among them, who hadn't succumbed to slumber, either showered, eased their bowels, read a book in bed, procrastinated on smartphones, or mournfully regarded an expired grilled cheese sandwich, or perhaps the most commonplace, just stared with a 1,000-yard stare melancholically into space. This woman fell asleep in a puddle of her own fluids. This sad man ate quiche and had depression. Then I removed their only source of joy and solace, the bookshelves and replaced them with 100 uncomfortable elementary school-sized desks, 100 copies of desktops that weren't any good, and 100 copies of chairs made for kindergartners. Much was awry. Finally, I had set everything up, streamer desks and all, but there was crap everywhere. An odoriferous burrito, smelly toast, and every goddamn sim was uncomfortable except this man who was just tense for some reason. At long last, one man learned to turn on the computer and was using it to watch e-girls on Twitch. More and more, they began to tune out of their own lives and turn on to 4chan and Reddit and places like that. They became goofier. No, really, like they cultivated goofiness. Mischief is a skill that you can develop in The Sims 4. Look it up. I logged on to the PCs from all of the rooms, signing everyone up for exactly the same job. Video game streamer. And I picked out an e-girl cat avatar for everyone. Man, woman, or anything in between. It didn't matter. The first job promotion required level 2 gaming and level 2 entrepreneurship, neither of which seemed attainable, since most of my Sims seemed trapped in stasis, interrupted only by momentarily blips of life coursing through their veins. People were passed out in vulnerable positions, surfing forums, and just generally milling about. When you assign work to 100 Sims, most of them will resist doing the assigned task like they're allergic to it. Brief interlude here. I tried lowering the number of Sims to only 8 in an alternate save file, during which period one man nearly self-immolated, 3 of the women got about 17 followers, and everyone leveled up at gaming. But for the most part, they were universally uncomfortable and upset, confirming that this was indeed the status quo. I returned to my experimental playthrough where people were dying because they were unable to get the vegetables inside of themselves before unfortunately starving to death, and then being paid a visit by the iPad-equipped Grim Reaper. Another man died, also of starvation, bringing the count down to 98. Live streaming is indeed a dangerous and sometimes deadly profession. I tried swapping out the potato computers with dinky webcam-equipped PCs, but I used it to sign more people on for streaming. But around this time, I realized that my computer simply wasn't powerful enough for this challenge. So I started streaming the challenge onto Twitch and begging my viewers for help because I didn't know how to get it to run properly. I turned down the graphics to complete garbage, and I installed the simulation lag fix and simulation unclogger mods, which honestly sped the game up immensely, but maybe not completely enough for what was about to happen. I restarted the entire challenge because I couldn't tell what was going on anymore, and I realized that I had horribly messed up. I lost the ability to spawn Sims in somehow. I'm not quite sure still what happened. So I started spawning them in just 10 by 10 with an alternate way, the relationships.createFriends for Sim command. Then running them off like cattle to the slaughter into the bright, inviting rooms of my palace of loneliness. For the most part, almost everything was awesome until I opened my task manager, at which point I decided that the scope of this stupid idea had far exceeded single CPU threading, and this was a very optimistic idea for a video. But still, I persisted. People ran in like ants, streaming, gaming, doing push-ups, and generally exhibiting productive behaviors at first, even beyond the sim limit. From there, I added another 10 to a total of 20. Still, everything was mostly okay. And then things began to become not okay. 30 was definitely not okay. 40 was even worse. And beyond that, my Sims were capable of doing only 2 things. 1, starving to death, and 2, accidentally setting themselves on fire. Wow, what a shame. What a real shame. Together, these made for a lethal wombo combo. People got hungry, tried to cook, and then burned everyone in the surrounding rooms. And my streamers made only about $20 in 2 days of me forcing everyone to work. Everyone was dirty and standing in urine. Even the Grim Reaper struggled at the entry. So as the horrible fires spread, and spread, and spread, I removed the rooms of dead Sims, most of whom hadn't even done a single live stream yet, for failure to raise enough energy to sit at the computer. One by one, almost everyone died, until I was back down to like 16 or so, at which point they began to catch up with the horrible code loop and exhibit behaviors of self-preservation at last. By the bitter end, 84 people dead. They had made a total profit of $40. But finally, They were gaining followers, uninhibited by the masses of sub-for-sub VTubers among them. But it just goes to show that in the brutal world of entertainment, not a lot of people have what it takes to withstand the pain of being set on fire. So I had completely failed, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. In the end, internet clout just isn't worth it. The real reward was savoring the fire that burned our skin, the burritos we could have eaten, the toast we left to go stale, and the people we rendered inside of. I literally couldn't have tried this challenge, and my computer would have horribly died if it hadn't been for the mods that make this game playable at such a grandiose scale. So if you decide you want to torture yourself and your PC too, maybe give it a try. Big thanks again to CurseForge for sponsoring this Task Manager session. I always love getting to take that out. The app is totally free to download and use. And trying out some of these mods also goes out to support the mod authors involved here. I'm ambiguousamphibian. A big thanks to my patrons who unclog my simulation every day. Until next time.